I seek your peace, I seek your love, I seek your guidance and wisdom down my path along. I am love, 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 love. I am love, 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 love. I am joy, joy, I am joy, I am joy, joy, I am joy, I am joy, joy.
All right. Peace. So this peace. This presentation is in direct response to the conversation that's been occurring over there on Neteru Studios. It's a good discussion. It's a good topic. It's a good debate. There is not a serious clarity on the situation, right? Number one, we don't have a living priest to tell us, but we do have living traditions, right? It's very similar living traditions. And we want to give praise and honor and homage to our African ancestors, but we also want to contextualize the practices. Like, what are we really doing, in reference to reconstituting, reclaiming the legacy of Kemet, right? And so then this question is interesting, because we've got a lot of different ways that people are initiated into this, brought to this aspect of history, aspect of life, so on and so forth, right? And there's a lot of us that come to this from the spiritual side or from the cultural reclamation side, you know what I'm saying? And that we seek to see how the reclamation of Kemetic legacy can bring deeper meaning into our lives, deeper meaning, deeper purpose, deeper alignment into the life that we live, right? And that's primarily, that's one way. Then there's others that approach it in the scholarly way, just to add the greatness of Kemet to historical relevance and then to African history, right? And so those are two of the main streams of Kemetic reclamation that goes on, right? And so I kind of compiled this presentation here to really just go through what scholars actually say. What do the scholars actually say? And so we're gonna go through this. I'm just gonna read this. I'm gonna analyze it, and we're just gonna be introduced to, other people, other scholarly approaches on the topic, right? So I'm gonna get right into this. Just off the rip, right? Let me go into the whole little presentation mode here. Let me see how this looks. All right. So what do the scholars say, right? So what this is, and what I've done right here is just like a quick survey. I've done a quick survey on how different scholars have classified and recognized the Kemetic Neteru, right? And so just off the bat, just understand that there has not been one consensus are just one idea of what the Neteru were, right? And then because of our conditioning here in the Western world, right, when uh when we see and interact with the word neter, we automatically and instinctively go to what our conception of God is, and that's not necessarily the case, right? And that's not even how a lot of the scholars, the Western oriented scholars, approached it. So we're gonna see, right? So we got 8 categories. Then we're gonna go through 18 different scholars, and then we're gonna see 50 different points that they have, and we'll go from there, right? So here's the first category, right? Uh, and this divine force and principles, right? This first category, it treats the Neteru as forces and energies rather than actual beings. So we have scholars like Jan Assman. We're going to go through this, right? We have scholars like Jan Assman, Alfred Williams, and he kind of came up with this thing called the divine force principle. Theophilo Benga, we already talked about Obenga. We're going to go into Obenga a bit more. Theophilo Benga, Placid Temples, right? Placid Temples describe them as active, vital currents flowing from a single cosmic source called Wa Neter, right? Or the soul God, or the soul one. And looking at it in this way, Neter is less like a character in a story and more like electricity moving through a circuit, right? And so then we got Williams. Williams over there, he talks about a divine force, right? So here we go. The other classification, right? Metaphysical framework, metaphysical principles, right? This is our second set of scholars, scholars. Now, Swala de Lubix, he is a metaphysician, so he's gonna come at it like this, so we should understand that, right? Swala de Lubix, Malana Karinga, Theophilo Binga describe the Neteru as principles of nature. Now, you're gonna see some of these scholars overlap, right? Balance and cosmic regulation, right? Ma'at is the clearest example. Ma'at, not a goddess, is not really a goddess that presides over justice, right? From outside, but is the very principle. Ma'at is the energy, is the essence of what holds things together, right? And Atum also can be considered in this way, right? It is a self-developing principle. Atum is the self-developed one, right? It's not a distant creator God. It's intrinsic within creation, right? So this is more like the Neters as natural law, right? And this is more abstract. It's like these abstract principles rule over natural law. Then we have the scholars that see them as aspects and dimensions, right? Swala de Lubix is here, Eric Hornung, Augustine Casa, Wallace Budge, Infudishi Jehudimaz, and Milana Karinga. They fall into this line as well. You're going to see a lot of the scholars overlap. You're definitely going to see a lot of the scholars overlap, right? Eric Hornung describes God has a channel of power, right? The source of a channel of power, right? And then Casa and Jehudimaz, right? They say that Atum is the totality of existence itself. All right. Then we have scholars that call them cosmic elements, right? And Theophilo Benga traces creation back to Nun, right? Which is the undifferentiated primeval waters from which Atum Ra emerges, Then we have John Osman, who connects this to a solar cycle, right? And then Augustine Costa says that life and order are twin forces dwelling together from the very beginning. Um, then we have Gerald Massey, but most people kind of see you quote Gerald Massey or something, they dismiss it. But Gerald Massey also falls into this category, right? Then we have this person, Raymond, right? Raymond says the Neteru are verbs in motion. They are defined by what they do, right? The Sheptiu, the builder gods, don't shape the world out of clay, but it's their very essence. They are the forces. They are forces of creation. They don't shape it through actual work, but just by being. Their being shapes creation, right? And just by saying their names, by verbal recitation, creation comes into creation, right? And then you do have people that say that they're intermediaries, kind of like angels. Allen falls in that as well. Raymond goes there, and John and Beatty, right? Now, people that say they're actual gods really is just Gerald Massey is in a few of these categories, but really this is just Faulkner. And in his dictionary of Middle Egyptian, he just says Neter is God, but he also says Wa Neter, soul God, right? So monotheistic manifestations, right? Uh, this framework says that the Neteru were never created. They're endlessly multiplying into countless forms without ever losing the essential unity, right? Um, and so here we are. This diagram brings all of these, connects all of these together, right? So let's look. We can skip over Swallow de Lubix and the first couple ones I put together here. We'll go to Raymond Faulkner, right? Faulkner's dictionary, right? Faulkner's dictionary says Neter is God, right? And then Faulkner takes the most conventional route. He just says the word Neter is God and doesn't give any further elaboration. There's no like discussion on what this actually means. Right? Hold on, let me see something. There's no discussion on like what this actually means, right? And this belongs to the literal dictionary standard translation that most people carry on this topic, right? Um, it's included here because it represents the baseline assumption that every other classification is goes off of, right? But Faulkner's own dictionary complicates this, right? By calling by by his compound term Wa Neter, which means soul God or soul Lord, right? This single entry really says that there's only one creator or one God, one entity in existence, right? And so this is like our monotheistic manifestations category that we got going on here. Then we got Jan Assman, right? Jan Assman wrote a book in called The Search for God in Ancient Egypt, right? And he says that there was one underlying God that was repeatedly identified with the sun, Ra, so to speak, R10, that was behind the actual manifestations, right? This, and then there's also monotheistic in this category. However, rather than many separate sun-related deities, Jan Assman sees one solar deity expressing itself through different names and different contexts. Everything is just a manifestation of the one, right? So Assman, Asman makes an argument here that looks like African philosophy, right? And it kind of mirrors what Placido Temples is talking about when he talks about the concept of vital force, right? And he says that the Egyptian divine name does more than identify a thing, right? He says it it gathers energy, vital force. It gathers essence, right? The name gathers energy. The name gathers essence. And this places him right into forces and energies category, right? The name of a thing is its essence, is its energy. The name of a thing is its essence and its energy, right? Which uh, is like Bantu philosophy. By naming a thing based on its function, naming a thing based upon how it functions, right? And then he has a book of gods and gods, and then he describes how the in this book he discusses how the entire cosmos was understood, right? The condition of the universe was measured by the sun, the cycle of the sun. Everything was measured by Ra, right? And so this would fall into like cosmic elements, where divinity is saw through the physical structure of creation. So for in this context, Jan Assman says that the sun was the master agent by which the cosmic order was set. And really, when you think about that, our entire life is regulated by our proximity to the sun. Spring, summer, fall, winter, proximity to the sun. Night and day, proximity to the sun. Morning, noon, night, proximities. Our entire life is regulated by the sun. Whether or not, in today's modern world, we don't necessarily want to acknowledge that, but our entire life is regulated by the sun. All right. Now, Eric Hornan, right? He has a book called Conceptions of God in Ancient Egypt, right? And then he argues that a priest's relationship to the Neter was felt. The priest had to perform the ritual to bring in the divine force. In ritual practice, the priest feels the power of the god directly through chanting sacred names. All right. And this, so Eric Hornum would fall into the divine force category. Eric Hornum calls them divine forces. And then the god itself acts as a channel for a particular power, right? Power flows through the god from the single source, from the noon. Force flows through it, right? Then we have Alfred Williams, right? And he has a book called Tothian Hermeneutics, in which he introduces the term divine force, right? And rather than choosing between God, principle, or force, William has a whole new term for it, right? Which he hopes could kind of encapsulate all three. All right. Um, I'm gonna stop right here for a moment, just relax, and just go into this at a later date, you know. But I just wanted to present that really quickly, because the scholars, there's no, when Reggie is up here saying that the scholars agree with him, that's not necessarily true. And the only way he can do that is if he does this pick and choose how he reads thing, right? Which is interesting because the only way he can convince the audience that that his position is the dominant position is if he doesn't read everything, his exegesis, so to speak. Um, and then that whole thing yesterday, I'm listening in the background as I'm doing my work, and it devolved into, you know, mixing over into what Jabari is saying because there is no clear cut consensus on whether or not they were literal or not. That whole Geb not being the earth, but being the principle of the earth, the God of the earth. And that means that where's the body of Geb? What is the body of Geb? Geb is a spirit. So that brings into question a whole lot of things. They were missing, or weren't able, or did not focus on certain things. Hindsight 2020, so to speak. But I was thinking this while it was even occurring. So how could Asar manifest from a spirit if the spirit is not physical? It's a lot of stuff going on here when you try to be literal with the Kemites. When you're trying to just say they're all literal. So anyway, peace.